I wasn't wrong. Do you remember when they closed all the gyms and the churches and the small businesses for your safety, but left open fast food stores and big box corporate stores and liquor stores because they were essential? Do you remember how when the kids did eventually go back to school but had to wear masks, but were told that they could play their full contact sports, but they had to wear masks during those sports in order to keep themselves safe? Do you remember that? Do you remember telling people how ridiculous that was? Remember how you tried to tell people and all you got in return was called names and shunned from society? Remember how confused you were in the beginning? It was like a switch flipped, and everyone around you suddenly had what you now know is called the fluoride stare. Just overnight, people who had the most common sense, just everyday normal people, now suddenly were fighting people in Target because those other people weren't wearing masks. Do you remember that? Remember how fucking gobsmacked you were? Do you remember how when you finally did find people who thought like you did, who understood how this whole thing just seemed really, really off, but they were too afraid to stand up with you because they did not want to be publicly shamed? Too weak, so they just agreed with the masses in order to avoid that uncomfortable conversation or confrontation. Do you remember that? Do you remember the moment that it first dawned on you how quickly people would line up to protect the very system that was blatantly lying to them about everything to begin with? How absolutely vile and horrific those people got. But then do you remember when the next variant came? And it was a little less. And then when the next variant came, it was a little less. And then when the next variant came, it was almost nobody. It was almost like watching a garden blossom. Slowly but surely, all of the flowers started to open. Remember when it was understood that newest variant, latest variant wasn't going to work? And so they immediately switched to the war in Ukraine within 24 hours. And it took a few minutes, but the people eventually caught on and they started to revolt. They started to push back. When the Ukraine narrative started to fall apart, they went straight after Israel. And that took a little longer, but eventually we got there. We revolted for various different reasons, but revolted all the same. Do you remember how they're trying to scare everybody with the bird flu? How it was being spread to cows and then spread to people, and how your meat could be contaminated? People went out and bought chickens. They supplied themselves, their families, and their communities with eggs and chicken. They're actively doing it now. There's a whole side of TikTok dedicated to it. Remember by the end of this, when all big pharma was exposed for who they really are and what it was really about and who was getting paid and how much per jab, it trickled down from the vid to other medications. People are actively advocating for themselves when it comes to the things that they need medically. They're not just blindly following along. They're reading through side effects thoroughly. Who makes the medication, how much money they make, what other things that company's invested in. Remember in the beginning when everybody was screaming about save the children? And now Hollywood's fallen, and every single person in this country is fully aware of the problems that we have in regards to human and child trafficking, whether they believed the conspiracies or not. They are aware. And how that made victims of child and human trafficking comfortable enough to come out and share their stories and to seek help, which in turn then helped other victims of human and child trafficking. Do you remember when I told you the story about the Federal Reserve and how it was created during the height of typhoid fever? Now the dollar is failing. The very thing that keeps us a slave to the establishment. There are lots of rumors that it's now going to be backed by gold and silver again. I'm not wrong. It's just slow. And my biggest fear is that not everybody is going to make it to the end. But better days are coming. I'm not wrong.
Better days are coming.
Absolutely.
But the worst days are upon us.
Oh, it'll get worse.
Yeah. It has to get worse before it gets better, right? Well, thanks for coming on with us, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me, brother.
This topic, it hits close to home for a lot of us. Well, I should say a lot of us, a few of us. Those of us who are in the know.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's going to affect every home.
Yeah.
When people hear the term apocalypse, certain things come to mind. People typically think of massive doomscapes, dystopian worlds, etc. One huge bad thing happening, like nuclear holocaust or nuclear winter. I think of a few events and that's that, and then we all just kind of limp along afterward. That's part of the process in some ways, a few cataclysms on the way, but that's not the point. That's not the end result. That's not where the hope's at. Where the hope is at is in what's beginning. So, I don't want to go on too much of a diatribe, but I feel like it's something that needs to be clarified to a lot of people, that change of what they think is real is coming. What apocalypse really means is an unveiling. Nothing new to us. So, I like this picture because representative, figurative in many ways, it's about right. We're coming out of something that isn't quite real. It doesn't have all the color of reality. But this is a beginning. It's a rough, bumpy start, just as it was long, long ago when our species came to be. The book of Genesis, you could think of that as the Cliff Notes version of the story. It's accurate, but there is so much more to the story. And now here we are again, at the turning of an age. And this time it's a completion. So, this is where the word apocalypse comes from. You see on screen, it comes from an ancient Greek word that essentially means uncovering, apocalypsis. From, I'm guessing, I don't read Greek, but inferring a bit, apocalypsis, calyps. It's a disclosure of knowledge, i.e., it's a lifting of the veil of revelation. In religious contexts, it's usually a disclosure of something hidden, a revelation. That's what an apocalypse is, everyone. It's a revelation. The apocalypse of John, as we call it, is the book of Revelation. There's an unveiling, a peeling back of the curtain. So, I wanted to cover this today because so many, honestly, I'm a little bit mixed about the audience I'm speaking to. So many of the people who I hope are watching this show have some religious background. Maybe they don't. They have some background of awareness that not everything's as it seems right now, and a lot of secrets are coming to light. Or maybe they don't. There are a great many people who I would hope are slowly coming to that realization, as this nice lady at the beginning of the episode was describing. More and more people, that flower starts to blossom more and more as more and more people come to be part of the unveiling. The veil is peeled back from their own eyes, and they start to see there is more to this. Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun, and I believe it was Christ who said that everything would come to the light. And that's where we're at. All the old secrets are coming to light. And some of it will seem new. A lot of it is going to be unwelcome. A lot of it is going to clash with what you personally believe, what you identify with. And that's an important thing to consider, what you identify with, because it's easy to tell somebody they're wrong and for them to incorporate new knowledge if they don't identify with that prior belief that's being challenged. But if you identify with it, if your sense of self and identity is tied to your belief in XYZ bit of information, true or false, you're losing a necessary flexibility for this time of change, and it is a time of change. Not change of the truth. The truth is consistent, always has been. But as we said, or as I said a moment ago, it's been concealed. It's been covered up. So avoid your cognitive dissonance. Be open to the idea that maybe you missed some nuance in there. Even if you're essentially correct, chances are you missed some nuance in there. We've revealed so much of it over and over and over now through every episode of this podcast, every live stream, whatever you choose to call it, through all of our teachings, through the congregation, through our timelines. We've been showing you, and we're one piece of a massive effort to do so. The big key difference that we have that all the other watchers don't have is we know Christ is back. We saw alertly that thief in the night when everyone else is waiting for a big spectacle to happen again. It already did. It made world news. We've revealed the mark of the beast to not be what everyone thinks it is, because with a bit of reading comprehension and understanding of nuance, we learn that there's a reason the very next chapter changes its tone so drastically while still talking about the same thing. Yes, Revelation 13 and 14 are talking about the same mark. It is a mark of God. It is a mark of the beast that is Christ. I expect questions from that. I should hope so. I welcome you to go back and watch the episode about that. We probably answered your questions already. We see so many conspiracy theories coming true. We see it coming true to the point that it's laughable now.
Yeah, we're running out of them.
We're running out of conspiracy
Yeah,
theories, guys.
it's all just becoming just blatantly true. There was a couple of videos that we were watching before we started on this show, and I think it could add some context to this. What do you think? We should show that?
I hope so, yeah.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to pull one of those up right now.
The world is a stage.
The Titanic was an inside job.
Yes, it was. The Titanic was sunk in 1912 because a guy by the name of Mr. Uster, who was against the Federal Reserve, he was such a strong figure that they put a bullet in him, they could have started a war.
Yeah.
So they can't do that. So they built a ship, and they made sure all the most important people were on this ship. And at the very, very last minute, J.P. Morgan and all of those guys exited the ship. The ship sinks. 1913, they go to Jekyll Island. They finish the deal. The Federal Reserve is basically born. After they got the Federal Reserve in 1913, now they had the money they needed to start World War I in 1914. So it goes from this: Titanic, Fed, World War I.
9/11. I woke up. I saw the TV. I think I'm watching the movie Die Hard.
Before we get into that 9/11 stuff there, Albert Pike wrote a letter outlining exactly what their plan
It was
was.
1871 letter to Giuseppe Mazzini, another Mason.
So J.P. Morgan essentially helped fulfill what the master plan was.
Yes.
This isn't just
Oh, and
J.P.
worth
Morgan's
pointing
plan.
out, before we go to the next point in this video, guess what John F. Kennedy was doing and very boldly declared he would do to the nation just before he was assassinated?
Well, he made a speech about ending secret oaths and secret machinations and
ending
secret
the Federal
societies.
Reserve. He was
Yeah.
going to go up against the Federal Reserve.
He wanted to go up against all the secrets that were plaguing America,
And
apparently.
while we're at it, let's look at some of these terrible, terrible Middle Eastern despots and dictators who have been assassinated over the years. Muammar Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein. two perfect
Gaddafi, no,
examples.
that's a very interesting one. He actually did quite a lot for his people in Libya.
Yep.
In fact, his people celebrated him as a great leader, and really, that's truly what he was. He was just painted the opposite by the West.
Well, dissent was sowed for sure. It wasn't that his people were so unanimous about him, but
They
there's
were
a
at
reason
first.
for that. Yeah, they would have been if not for foreign meddling. Same with Gaddafi, with Hussein, and both of them were in defiance of the Federal Reserve, the world reserve currency, the U.S. dollar as that. They didn't need it. They had their own gold. They had their own oil. They had everything they needed to run without the Federal Reserve, and they were doing so. And that can't be tolerated. So they were silenced. And that was part of the script.
Something interesting that I never really would have expected to be a part of the script was the moon landing, which it just seems like such an outlandish
It's
thing.
the crack in the door.
Yeah.
That's what the moon landing is when it comes to NASA, science, space, the shape of the world, everything. The moon landing is the crack in the door. That's where the foot enters to open it the rest of the way. That's the start of people coming to realize, wait a second, that's not quite right. What else is going on here?
The false reality that they've created, the illusion, the wizard's stage trick.
Oh yeah. Whitest kids you know reference.
Yeah. Watch this hand while this hand is the one that really deceives you.
True.
I want to go more into the moon landing, actually. You called the moon landing the Easter Bunny for adults.
A lot of people, like, we just have good, like, you have your instinct. I always say, like, your gut is divine. Like that, somebody tells you something and you just go, doesn't really make sense, right? I don't really know. But then suddenly psychology, what they realize that if you just keep saying to someone something, it becomes true. And again, the bigger the lie, people will believe it. And so what we have is what Scott Adams refers to as the non-expert problem. So your gut tells you, like, sounds pretty crazy that we went to the moon all these times for a couple of years and then we just didn't go back forever and we were just like done. Like, that sounds weird. And where's the technology? And they didn't even have cell phones. And like, you're telling me this, they live streamed this and there was a phone call. I don't know, like, it just seems like a little weird for like 1969. But you're like, well, I don't really understand kind of outer space. So I'm not going to debate this, but my gut tells me this is all BS. So then I decided to read this document. It was 119 pages. And I know there's a book too, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. And he just broke down the science in a way that was very digestible. So I didn't have a non-expert problem. And so there's a basic thing that you guys can do. If you're like somebody who's like, it had to have happened, the moon landing, what you can do is look up the Van Allen belt. Okay, so there's a Van Allen belt. So we have never gone beyond that belt, right? There's been no human that's gone beyond that belt since the moon landings, allegedly. And not even Elon Musk, when they go out to space, they have to stay, like, there is a space station, but like once you get 200 miles out, you hit the Van Allen belt, which has an incredible amount of radiation. NASA has said, like, in order for us to get through it, we'd have to have cement blocks around someone. So I want you to just Google, if you're watching this, the temperature of the Van Allen belt, okay? Just Google that. And you're gonna get something like, at the lowest points in the Van Allen belt, it's, I think, 3,000 Kelvin. And at the highest points, it's like 30,000 Kelvin. And then I want you to Google what material the shuttle was made out of. And then I want you to Google at what temperature
that would burn.
That would just burn. And you're just going to laugh out loud. You go, this literally doesn't make sense that an aluminum alloy could have gone through the Van Allen belt for an hour and a half or 59 minutes. It just couldn't have happened. It literally can't happen. There's no explanation for it. They just don't even talk about it. They don't like talking about the Van Allen belt because that part makes entirely no sense. And then he went through and he spoke about, like, the camera. So they allegedly took camera. I want you to Google the temperature of the moon. Okay, they had their big bulky gloves on. They took these cameras and just go, hey, what camera is that from 1969 that was able to survive temperatures of like 250 degrees of Fahrenheit to like negative 250 degrees Fahrenheit, just like on the moon while they were just like jumping around. And you're gonna go, where's this camera? Then Google's gonna tell you, oh, actually, they only made 8 of those cameras, and they decided to give them, you're gonna love this, to a guy who makes movies. I'm blanking on the name of this guy who just a couple of years before the moon landing, he's a famous director. He made a movie about outer space. What's it? Stanley Kubrick. So he was friends with Jack Parsons, who established the Apollo program for NASA. So those two were friends. They were out in LA and they literally worshipped Satan. They were both Aleister Crowley recipients. So they were considered, the religion was called Thelema. And his protege was Jack Parsons. He was the creator of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which became the Apollo program. So Jack Parsons was a committed Satanist, and they would have sex rituals.
Has the internet done?
Yeah, I don't know. It's buffering. So, yeah, that's weird. But that's okay. Interesting timing. Mm-hmm. We're not allowed to see the rest of that video, apparently. I hope our internet's okay. But, yeah, that's strange.
Well, having already seen it, I can already...
Yeah, let's summarize
recap
for
it a bit.
people.
So
and
what
hopefully we don't get canceled, too.
Yeah, well, that only works for so long.
Yeah. Just find another platform.
Yeah. So, and to recap some of this, yeah, Jack Parsons, Stanley Kubrick, and L. Ron Hubbard were all part of the same little circle doing all of this, and well-documented Satanists. This isn't like a conspiracy theory, it's public information. So, hop on Wikipedia. She's saying you don't have to go down some Reddit rabbit hole. You could, but it's public already. So, moon landing, Easter Bunny for adults. Yet another. Well, one of the bigger steps forward, I think, for people coming to realize, wait, there's a lot out there that's not true. You have to have that understanding that awakening start to happen at some point or another. It's inevitable. Better sooner than later, frankly, because you're going to be a lot more likely to end up in better standing when the dust settles if you come to understand sooner. And what I mean by that is the sooner you realize that so much of what you've been taught and so much of what you believed isn't quite right, the sooner you can realize that, oh wait, Christ might actually be back and maybe I misunderstood something. And that's a vital step to seeing the kingdom. Granted, there will be a lot of people in the kingdom who did not expect to be there. But even they're going to have to go through this process. Nobody will enter the kingdom without a death of sorts. A death of the identity that's holding on to false beliefs. The kingdom is a place of truth. There can be no falsehood permitted to thrive there. So you're going to have to go through some uncomfortable changes of what you believe to be true. And I hope that this little video, this little chat here that we're having will hopefully soften that a bit for everyone.
We'll still have scuba diving in the New Kingdom, right?
Yeah, I sure hope so.
Okay, but we'll call it what it is. It won't be
The International
spacewalking.
Space Station has taken an unexpected turn. The astronauts doing the spacewalks will now be wearing snorkels after the last astronaut who performed a spacewalk nearly drowned when his helmet filled with water. Let's get to...
But just my gut
Gee, I
inside
wonder
me
why.
said, that's my dive buddy, and I should be with my dive buddy. That's my dive buddy, and I should be with
Granted,
my dive
they
buddy.
train together in water
Last
scenarios.
spacewalk
Sure.
ended with Italian astronaut Luca Parmitano nearly drowning in his helmet after it started filling with water.
Water is in his eyes
Why?
now, and it seems to be increasing.
Fellow astronauts quickly
Why is there
Look at
water?
that green
back
screen
into
right
the
there.
station. When they did, water poured from the helmet.
And just out of the airlock right now. And I'll get in config to get the waist tethers all hooked up, the safety tethers, I should say.
Dave Williams beginning the third spacewalk of his career.
I saw some droplets coming out, and I'm looking at you from camera, Charlie.
Okay.
And I saw them go up towards your feet.
Okay, I don't see anything.
Bubbles in Space starts today at theaters everywhere.
Yep.
So how long do you want to hold on to this joke? Come
As
on.
long as we could hold our breath.
In space.
Yes.
Underwater.
Under space water.
Right.
In front of a green screen of space.
Yeah. Well, any pool with the lights off, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's not a very clever ruse, but it is from the reptilian mind, one might say.
I would argue they're much better at camouflage. This is a perfect example of something that I think has to be said again. All of this, the unveiling as well as the concealing, are part of the script.
Yeah. But
Those of us who have been more alert,
I feel like they're testing how stupid us apes are, you know? Like they really look down on our intelligence levels so much that they'll do stuff like that and convince people that it's true.
and it works.
Yep, and this is how stupid us monkeys are.
Sadly, they're not always wrong.
Yeah.
Satan and Christ, before humanity became what it is now, long before Yeshua's time, they had their debate in heaven. And the book of Job is a good example of this playing out once more in action, in process. But there was a claim made by Satan about the nature of humanity. And he was given, by heaven, he was given the authority to go down there and down here and test that theory. And he hasn't always been wrong. Now, every individual has their opportunity to prove him wrong, to prove that, no, Christ is right, there's something here worth saving. Be that counter argument for the Lord, because he put his neck on the line for us to prove Satan wrong. But before we play this video, I have to stress the point. I don't feel like it's coming across well enough to all the watchers, to all the so-called conspiracy theorists, I should say conspiracy observers at this point, to all of you out there who are coming to understand that not everything is as it seems, understand that that too is part of the design. You're not bucking the system by coming to realize the truth. You're just a step further in it. That step is inevitable. It's part of the pathway to the kingdom. But if you believe that your resistance is not planned for, I'm sorry to tell you, the only real resistance that you can make is to stand with Christ. He is back. He has returned. And without standing with him, sooner or later, you will not see the kingdom.
Yeah, they're really planning for and anticipating and hoping for a physical resistance. It's the spiritual resistance that they're not counting on people participating in.
How much greater of an argument could Satan make than to Satan, and it's not just him. Let's be honest. Christ is trying very hard to bring the light, the knowledge, the enlightenment, the awareness. It's Lucifer versus Satan. Guys, Satan is obscuring. Christ is the light bearer, the bright and morning star, as he himself said, Lucifer. So, you have to ask yourself how much more brutally the point can be made by Satan to unveil so much, to let slip so much, that's sleight of hand. Barack Obama, that name has Hebrew meaning, by the way, you should look into. He explains it here in this video quite pointedly, that even the unveiling, even the clues are part of the plan to spread doubt, to create, cynicism, essentially. And when that has spread so far, will you even be able to believe in the truth when you see it? Christ has returned. There's a video on the internet showing you the Holy Spirit over the Dome of the Rock, right over the place where he went up, and in Acts 1:11 they told you he would come in the same manner, and he did. Just as the scriptures of Matthew 24, several verses, but let's look at 27 and 28, I believe, talking about lightning going from east to west and joining, translation important here, the eagles gather. Where the eagles gather, there the body will be. Why do you think it said that right after talking about the Spirit returning? Because it's telling you where it's going. Read and understand. But you're going to doubt it. You're going to look at all this unveiling, and you're not going to believe what's right in front of you. You're going to call it Project Bluebeam, which itself is a psyop to make you doubt the real thing when it happens. There is no Project Bluebeam. That's the big joke about it. It's a deliberately sowed fear. Yes, they can sow conspiracy theories, guys. But you don't think that's a viable tactic, that serves a purpose? So in all this mist, all this fog that's being created, bright light swirling all around within it, smoke and mirrors, and light, spotlight, stage light, and the real light. It's going to get very difficult. Keep your head up. He has come. Listen to him. Believe in him. Believe what he's saying, his words, his ways, his lessons. Would you play the video, brother?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to play it. Just doing a little
Not
preparation.
him. I mean, understand what he's saying. I'm not saying listen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm talking about Christ, guys, not Barack Obama. Though some did worship him as Christ.
Yes. And
Blasphemously.
this will be like an end sequence for our stream today. So before we go,
Feel free to let it play.
Yeah, you will get to see it, what we're talking about here with Barack Obama. But It is Friday. We do wish you a peaceful Sabbath, but at the same time, while it is a rest from your physical labors, it is not a rest from your spiritual labors. Continue forward in receiving, processing, understanding, praying about, and absorbing and sharing the truth. And this truth that we are trying to share with you about Christ's return and about the enemy's machinations against the truth. Please be mindful of this. Have a peaceful Sabbath day. Shabbat Shalom. In the name of Lord Rael. Love God and love each other.
Amen. I'll play the video. Love y'all. Bye.
Sewage. You just have to raise enough country's public square with enough raw sewage. You just have to raise enough questions, spread enough dirt, plant enough conspiracy theorizing that citizens no longer know what to believe. Once they lose trust in their leaders, in mainstream media, in political institutions, in each other, in the possibility of truth, the game's won.
All of a sudden, we were given this free thing from the Society of America. 78% of your free clinics were placed in black and urban areas for the purpose of something free of charge from a racist society. As to put it in words of one pro, we don't need so many Negroes anymore. There's no more cotton to pick. These feelings about black people, this was one way of doing it as a social benefit, if you will. We're here to help you. Black women, and let it be stated, black women never demonstrated, demanded, or even requested the right to an abortion. We've been asking for the right to decent housing, the right to education, and the right to health care. And all we've been given free of charge is the right to keep our unborn child.
In 1993, the government started spraying our grain source with folic acid. Guess what went on the rise? Antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication, gut medication.
So we're worth more to them sick.
Oh, for sure. You know, they came up with the folic acid, really it's folate, which prevents neural tube defects in pregnant women. So that's why you hear when women are pregnant, they're supposed to take high doses of folic acid. That's fine if you don't have an MTHFR genetic mutation. If you do, then folic acid really is what's causing postpartum depression. It happened to me. And couldn't figure out why. I was like, my child is healthy, I am happy, I'm thrilled. Why am I crying in the shower and out of bed? And as soon as I stopped taking the prenatal vitamin, it all went away. And so then your doctor blames it on the hormones. In reality, if postpartum depression was hormone related, then all pregnant women would have postpartum depression, but we don't.
And do you think that the country will see the United States will see the first president or the first woman president?
We already have it with Obama, so let's just calm down.
Got it.
You know Michelle is a...
I'm sorry, she's a what?
We all know.
Oh my gosh.
When all those people were saying plant-based meat is the future, like, it is. It's really bad for you. You're way better off buying cows and eating cows than you are buying corn. Because in order to grow a stalk of corn, a lot has to die. And if you're using monocrop agriculture and using industrialized farming methods and you're controlling enormous swaths of land with only one crop, that is totally unnatural, doesn't exist anywhere in nature. And in order to do that, you have to poison everything else. You have to kill all the animals, you have to poison the land, you have to strip the topsoil, you have to use industrialized fertilizer. You can't grow things that way normally.